Hello there everyone, my name is Crazy Caleb and welcome to Musical Transposition. So this is the way the module looks. It looks like a smaller version of the piano here. And what we have here is we have a letter on the side, a series of 6 different notes, it's always going to be 6, and a submit button down at the bottom. Now this module is actually fairly simple, and for those of you who are familiar with the concept of cruel piano keys, this module is going to be very similar to how this exactly works because it's a lot of the exact same concepts, a lot of the same musical terms. Prime sequence, retrograde, inverse, and of course the infamous retrograde inverse sequence. And this is going to be what we're looking at here. Now, I'm going to simplify a lot of these terms here, and this is actually not too hard of a mod to do. It definitely does take, I'd say, probably a tiny bit longer, if not the exact same time as CPK. But CPK is specifically asking for a series of 12 different notes, one of each individual note, whereas this one is only asking for 6. So that's going to be the difference here. But there is also a couple different steps we have to do, and I'll get into those in just a moment. So first things first, though, we need to figure out what we're going to be doing with this module. And we're going to start with the last digit in the serial number, then follow the steps below, in this case, a bunch of edgework conditions. So we're going to start with the last digit of the serial number, in this case being 3. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at these conditions. If there's a vowel in the serial number, add 3. Yes, there is. India is a vowel, so we're going to add 3. That's going to give us 6. We're going to subtract the amount of battery holders in the bottom, which in this case is going to be 2. That's going to take us down to 4. And if there are 2 or more lit indicators, there is actually, yes. Add 2. But if there is a lit FRK label, we're going to skip this. There's lit FR Quebec, but not FRK. So we're going to still add 2 to this, giving us our 6. Okay. 2 or more unlit. There was only 2 lit, so we do not apply this rule here. And of course, paying attention for unlit car if this does happen to appear. And if there is at least one stereo RCA, we do not have any ports on the bottom, so we're not going to be doing that. Finally, if there's a serial port, like I just said, no ports. So next. And if the number is less than 1, keep adding 5 until it is at least 1. If the number is more than 20, that's a typo. Keep subtracting 5 until it is at most 20. It's not a typo, but it's missing a Romeo there for subtracting. I will put that in repo request later. Now, using that number, follow the table below to find a transposition number. So, in this instance, we have 6. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go down to this table here, and we're going to try and find a transposition number. So we're going to use 6 as our row, and now we're going to use these 2 conditions. So we're going to go from left to right, and we're going to take a look here. Is the last digit of the serial number even? No, it is odd. So we're going to be using this column here. And do we have an RJ45 port? No, we do not have any ports, so we're going to be using the otherwise column here, which is going to be a +1. We'll get back to that in just a moment here, but for now, what we want to focus on is we want to focus on the actual screen of 6 notes, as well as the letter that we're going to get on the right side here. So let's actually note this up down. So we've got Alpha, Delta, Bravo, Charlie, Foxtrot, and Charlie Sharp. So on the screen to the right, 1 or 2 letters will come up, and we're going to refer to the musical transposition Appendix A for definitions. And we're going to transpose the set of notes given on the top screen using these. So if we take a look down here, we actually happen to get the easiest case here, and it's called the prime sequence, or P for short, is the original base form of the 12-tone row, and no transformation actually takes place. So these notes that we get are going to be exactly what they are. We actually got lucky with no transformations. I hope I'm going to be able to get into sort of the retrograde or the inverse. The retrograde itself is actually quite simple. Retrograde is simply going to be just taking it in reverse order. It's simply flipping the entire thing. Whereas inverse is the one that I want to cover, and I'm going to get into. I'm going to make sure I re-roll for an example with that. And retrograde inverse essentially is a combination of the 2. So that's going to be what we're looking at here. So we actually don't have to change our sequence here, and rather what we have to do is we have to go to our final rule. Now, transpose the new notes up or down by the amount of semitones given by the table. So in this case, it's going to be a +1, and in this case, we're going to be going up. We're going to be going up by 1 note for each of these guys here. And the way that this is going to work is if we take a look down at this piano here, what we're going to essentially do is we're going to move up by semitones. And semitones are also going to be including the flats or sharps in this case. So we're going to be going from alpha up once to alpha sharp. And this is going to be our new note for that one right there. We're going to do this with all of these guys here. Delta is going to become delta sharp. Bravo is going to be going over to Charlie. We're going to go forward here. Charlie is going to become a Charlie sharp here. Foxtrot is going to become a Foxtrot sharp, and Charlie sharp is going to become a delta. And now, with this in mind, we've done our transposition here. We've gone up a note. We're going to essentially input these guys into the module here in this exact order, and now we're going to hit submit afterwards. So it's going to be alpha sharp, delta sharp, Charlie, Charlie sharp, Foxtrot sharp, and finally delta. And just like that is a solved module. So let's take a look at one more example. This module itself, fairly simple to do, but you just need to make sure that you understand how the musical theory of this works. The inverse one is the one that probably terrifies people the most, even though I use terrifying in a more in a much stronger tone than it probably should be. It's probably just a bit more of the hardest one to actually wrap your head around. But again, it's actually not that bad the way that it explains it in the manual and the way that I'm going to explain it here. So let's take a look at the next example. I will re-roll for for something of an inverse or retrograde inverse. But yeah, that's going to be what we're going to happen. And the inverse is exactly what you expect it would be. The retrograde inverse is essentially the inverse, and then you reverse it. That's just the way that it is. Ah, perfect. Here's a retrograde inverse. So now I'm able to show up the other two here. So we're going to take down our notes here, and we actually can worry about this whole transposition number at the end, because it is the last thing that we're actually going to be focusing on. We don't really care about this for right now. And now I'm going to be able to explain how retrograde inverse works for us. So we have alpha, Gulf sharp, Foxtrot, Delta sharp, Echo, and Gulf. Now, the way that retrograde inverse works is it wants us to take the inverse in retrograde. You can obviously do this in any order, but preferably what I'd like to do is I'd like to do the inverse, then reverse it. That's kind of the way that I'd like to do it. And the inverse works like this. The inverse sequence, or I for short, takes the prime sequence, but the intervals between notes are inverted. And the way that this works is what we're going to essentially do here is we're going to start from a specific note. We're going to compare the distance between these two, and then what we're going to do is we're then going to go backwards by that amount of notes, by that distance. So in this example, we have alpha and alpha. Well, of course, the first note is going to be the exact same, so that's just going to be alpha right here. Now, what's going to happen here is we're going to compare alpha and Gulf sharp. Alpha and Gulf sharp, if we were to go forward, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So it would be 11 times forward. So in this case, we're going to go backwards 11 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Now, obviously, you don't have to do it this way. And actually, one of the simpler ways that you can do it is if you simply go back 1, all you simply know that you need to do is you need to go from alpha forward 1 to give us the new note of alpha sharp. That's essentially what this is doing, is you're comparing the gap between the two notes and essentially going in the opposite direction from one of the notes. That's the way that this works. So, and make sure that you're comparing the correct note. You want to compare the first note with each individual note here. That's the way that it's referring to it in here. So, from A to B would essentially be taking 2 semitones. So, in this case, if you take a look here, the distance between them is indeed 2 notes. We've got alpha sharp in between, and then we get to bravo. And then what it wants us to do here is it wants us to go from alpha here, we're going to go back to, and that's going to give us the result of Gulf, which in this case, as you can see here, the inverted sequence would be A, then G, as G is negative 2 semitones away from A. That's the way that this works. So, that's essentially what we're going to do here. As an extended example, the inversion of the prime note, A, B, C, D, E, would be A, G, F, E, D. And what's going to happen here is the first note always remains the same, and all of the notes get inverted relative to that note. It's very important that you do it based off of the first note, because that's the way that the inverse works. So, that's kind of a simpler way to look at this. So now let's do the next example here. So alpha and Foxtrot is what we're going to be comparing here, which has a distance of 1, 2, 3, 4. It has a distance of minus 4 here. So what we can essentially do here is from alpha, we want to go forward 4 now. So we want to go 1, 2, 3, 4 to Charlie sharp. And Charlie sharp is going to be our next note. Now, if we were to do this the other way, what would happen here is we would get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then we would go backwards 8 would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's the exact same thing. Just make sure that the note that you're comparing is with the first note, and when you find the distance, you go from the first note the opposite direction. It's very important that you do this. So next up, alpha and delta sharp. Alpha and delta sharp, we can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 forward, we can go backwards 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which happens to be delta sharp. It happens to be exactly in the middle here. So, next up, we have echo. So next up, echo is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 backwards. So we can go forward 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to delta. And then finally, alpha to Gulf is back 2. So then we go forward 2 to Bravo. Okay, and now we've done the inverse of the retrograde inverse. So now what we simply need to do is we need to do the retrograde of this, which in this case we're gonna execute in reverse order. All we're simply gonna do is we're gonna do Bravo, Delta, Delta sharp, Charlie sharp, Alpha sharp, and finally Alpha. That's not a sharp, that is an @ sign, and there we go. Now, this is our sequence for this first part taken care of. We now need to figure out how much we're going to actually transpose these notes here, whether that be 0, +1, -4, etc., etc. So let's do this first bit right here. So now we have a 7. 7 works like this, so we're going to start with the last digit of the serial number, being 7. Is there a vowel in the serial number? No. We're going to subtract the number of battery holders, which is 1, so we're going to go down to 6. Do we have 2 or more lit, 2 or more unlit? We do not. We only have 1 indicator present. We only have 1 port present, but it's neither stereo or CA nor serial, so this is going to be our final number right here. Now, our last digit of the serial number is an odd. We're going to be using rule 6. There is no RJ45 port. We actually happen to get the exact same rule, in this case being a +1. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move our notes up 1 note. So we're going to go Bravo over to Charlie. We're going to go Delta over to Delta sharp. We're going to go Delta sharp over to an echo. We're going to go Charlie sharp over to Delta. Alpha sharp is going to go to Bravo, and Alpha is going to go to Alpha sharp. And these are going to be the 6 notes that we're going to implement into the module. So Charlie, Delta sharp, Echo, Delta, Bravo, and Alpha sharp. And just like that is a solved module. As always, thank you guys for watching. Remember to stay crazy, stay cool, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.